Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Career Services Connecting Keelhaulers series. We are joined today by several of our oceanography cadets who participated in their co-op in summer 2021, some of our first oceanography cadets to complete the internship requirement. First on, we have Mark Wheaton and then Seamus Jameson with me today. Both of you, thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join the call and dispense some of your knowledge from your summer experience. So I know it's going to be kind of unique based off or compared to the other interviews we did since you guys were both at the same, working out of the same place. So tell us where you guys interned, what, if you did have an official title, what that was, and then how did you guys secure your internship? And Mark, we can kind of let you kind of take it away, and Seamus, you can fill in any holes after that.
Hi guys, I'm Mark Wheaton. I'm a junior here at Cal Maritime, majoring in oceanography. And this past summer, I did an internship at San Francisco Estuary Institute, and I was part of the nutrients team, or NUTS they call it, and also part of the clean water management team, which is sort of the broader group. And over this summer, we conducted 3 different sets of experiments for phytoplankton and chlorophyll and nutrient levels. You want to add on, Seamus, go for it.
And what was the second part of that question?
How did you guys end up securing the internship?
Honestly, it just kind of, I was definitely proactive looking for internships and then with COVID, nobody really knew what was going to happen. But I was out there looking, and I don't want to get like I wasn't looking, but it just landed in my lap. I think it landed in his lap. We just kind of got a call or a notification like, hey, what are you guys doing this summer? I think we've got an internship for you. So the school found it for us. But still, I think both of us were still we weren't depending on it. We were both looking, but it just kind of worked out that there happened to be one, and we are the first. Well, I'm the first class technically, but Mark's kind of in with us, so he's in a lot of our classes. He's an upperclassman, so it just kind of made sense to give it to us because they wanted people to represent the school, and we already had some level of knowledge.
Gotcha.
Sort of adding on to what Seamus is saying. Well, we sort of first started off when with Dr. Parker, and Dr. Parker had asked me like, "Oh, do you have any plans for the summer?" And so then that's when I was like, okay, let me check my schedule. And I don't really have any plans. And so then he had sent me and Seamus an email saying, I have a possible internship for the summer with, was it like a fellow colleague, Seamus, or something like that? And then
yeah, they worked on a project. I also learned a little bit of a lesson is that you're going into a small community that everybody's connected. Everybody knows each other. So, and that was a perfect example that our PI and Professor Parker, I worked on several projects together and had a really good rapport.
Gotcha. Yep. And that's me talking to Dr. Parker as well. That's kind of how he's like, this is how it's going to work. So we'll be working, closely with the cadets now with him, utilizing some of his contacts and like you said, small community. So a lot of word of mouth type stuff where you're looking, but it's also just kind of what drops in your lap for sure. So let's go to your guys' kind of, what was your schedule like for your internship in terms of both work week, days of the week, things like that, and work schedule, how many hours, so on and so forth.
I'll take this one.
Go for it. You
yeah, and then you can finish up.
Yeah.
we made a great team. I really enjoyed Mark a lot. So at the beginning, they really hammered us with they didn't know, because this was the first year they had done it. So they didn't know how much we knew. And so they really hammered us with a lot of literature, a lot of research papers. There were classes that we had taken that prepared, or at least that I had taken that prepared me. This Oceans 305 was prepared me how to read a paper. And it really helped out because some of these papers can be really hard to digest. And so they were basically trying to figure out what we knew, and then we would read a paper, and then so we weren't really going in yet. We were kind of still at home reading, we had like a reading assignment, and then we would meet up and we would talk about it. And they had made a comment that by the time we were about 2 or 3 weeks into it, they were like, wow, we're really impressed with how much you guys know, coming out, that you're only junior, going into your senior year and him going into his junior year. I don't think they quite thought that we were going to know as much as we did. And that's why they really hammered us. It was probably about 300 pages altogether. It was a lot. And there was a lot to know. There were a lot of nutrients, microbiology, chemistry. Our internship covered a lot of stuff, even to a point, some physics, some physical oceanography. So we got lucky. We got like a whole gamut, a broad spectrum of everything we're learning here. And then once that phase 1 was over, then phase 2 was more like planning. And then we went to phase 3, and then that's when we started putting in like these 16-hour days, and because we were trying to get, and it wasn't because they were trying to like work us to death. It was because we wanted to do a total title cycle, which is 12 hours. So we had to get there early, leave late, and so it was just necessary for the project. But go ahead if you want to add on to this, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, adding on to what Seamus said is that we like at the beginning is pretty much we got a lot of background readings, a lot of pretty much stuff that we knew, but we just had to like get like a refresh on it. And then the second week was when we were doing our planning. So because of COVID, our field guide, Kristen, or project lead, she would email us and tell us, okay, this is the day that you're coming in to the office to discuss, like, okay, what supplies do you need, what, like how much. And so depending on the equipment that we needed, if there was a specific item that we didn't have, we would figure out how to get it, whether it was Amazon or going to West Marina. And then the phase 3 was the actual field work, and that's pretty much how it went.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I know certain jobs, it's like Seamus was saying, once you get into a certain thing, it's like the project's going to take what the project takes, and you got to put in the hours that are necessary for it, for sure. Moving on, so now like diving in a little bit more to the research that you guys were doing and kind of explaining, what was going on there. Mark, we'll let you kind of take this one. What, just kind of get into the background and in depth of what you guys were doing.
So based off of our internship that we did, we conducted 3 different experiments out of one big like topic. And so we did a spatial analysis of like the whole pond. So it's at El Viso Slough and Guadalupe Slough.
So the background, his background is actually
okay.
That's one of our sites.
Gotcha.
That was when we were packing up, getting ready to go home.
And so,
so you can see the sun going down.
yeah. The long day.
Yeah.
So
they're probably before the sun came up.
Yes, we were there. It was dark, 0 dark 30. Yes.
So some mornings I would have to wake up at like 4 a.m, and then Seamus would come pick me up, and then we'd go down to the site, and then go down to the headquarters where the truck is, and then drive the trucks down at around 4:35 in the morning with 2 kayaks and a how heavy was the buoy, Seamus, would you say?
It's probably 50, 60 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good size. But
So,
the 2 kayaks were definitely heavier. For sure.
One of our experiments was a spatial analysis, and that was pretty much kayaking 7.5 miles around the entire salt pond and gathering specific longitude, latitudes, and analyzing those samples. And then the experiment 2 and experiment 3.
Hold on. We also towed what they call a sonde, an exo sonde behind us, and it takes all these parameters like oxygen content, turbidity. So we wanted to take samples at these different latitude, longitudes, and then try to compare it to make sure that the numbers were jiving, right? And then they're trying to figure out what the interaction is between these salt ponds that were taken over by the state about 15 years ago. They used to be commercial salt ponds, and then the state took them over. They're trying to reintroduce them back into the environment. So they wanted to know what kind of an interaction the sloughs like a little river, interaction between the sloughs and the salt pond. So where we were doing this one was basically in the pond, and we were just basically circumnavigating the whole pond. That's why it was 7.5 miles. And these things are huge, by the way. And then when we did our other two projects, we did them at the breaches. They actually have breached the ponds to where they will, you know, depending on the tide, you have interaction of water going in and out of the ponds. But yeah, so go ahead and for the second part.
So the second experiment was at one of the sites, which you can see it in my background here. That was at the Guadalupe Slough and the Pond A5, which is the restored wetland. And so we were seeing what was flowing in, what was flowing out. And then our third one was more down towards, it was near the Fairfield Marriott Hotel, and it's called the Notch, and that's what our third experiment was.
Nice.
And those are the two that took like the 16-hour days.
Gotcha.
The prep before took a long time because we were trying to make, you know, we had checklists and we were like going through, because when you drive down to San Jose and it's 2 hours in traffic and you're leaving at 4 a.m, you really want to make sure you have everything. So we actually had checklists and we were going through them the night before or the day before, making sure we had everything and we were ready to go, because you don't want to get there at 5 a.m. and then find out that you don't have something that you really need. And then there are things that we just had to improvise. We can get into that later about improvisation. There will be a lot of that if you're on an internship as well.
Gotcha. So where was like the offices located, and then where were you guys conducting your research?
Do you want to answer that, Seamus?
So the office is it's in Richmond at Point Isabella, above the the race, where they used to do the horse races, just above that, just north of that, down by the El Cerrito border, Berkeley. And then where we actually did the research was called Alviso, which is in San Jose. It's kind of where Newark and San Jose meet. Levi Stadium, where the Niners play. Like,
okay.
A mile from there.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So that is a little bit of a drive to, and I definitely don't want to have to work back up through the freeway.
880 is horrible.
Yeah.
The traffic. Yeah.
Definitely. So you guys kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, like in terms of like reading the research papers, but any, you know, particular courses that you look back on as like, these really prepared me going into this internship, and allowed you guys as your intern coordinators basically said, like they were impressed by how far advanced you guys were, more than they thought. So any courses like that?
Well, the obvious ones were marine biology and marine ecology.
Yeah.
Those definitely played a big part. You'd say oceanography, the Oceanography 200, that one definitely helped, right?
I'd say definitely that one. A little bit of the physics came in, but not that much. But
some chem, because we have to take chem. I had taken chem 1 and 2 by that time. So had Mark and I had taken physics 1 and 2, and then the marine biology, the marine ecology. That 305 class definitely helped, because that was Oceans 305 is Introduction to Research. You know, reading research papers. And I had taken Oceans 380, which was like we did a project on upwelling off the California coast. So we learned how Ekman transport the nutrients come up. That one actually helped me. Mark hadn't taken that yet, but I think he would have, especially when we were doing the buoy sound, because we were going out on boats with the USGS, like as kind of the preparatory part. And we were taking, pulling up instruments and taking readings. So that helped out on that part, like understanding what things help. Oh, and MATLabs too, for sure. Yeah. Learning MATLabs was just coding for, it's like Python coding for science. And we were able to do data analysis and plotting, but that was huge. Actually, MATLabs was probably one of my most useful.
I would say that sort of what Seamus is saying, that this internship, it sort of gave me a little leeway for me this semester with my classes, mainly because of all the MATLabs and everything. I sort of got to understand like what the style of MATLab is, and like how frustrating MATLab can be, and then sort of thinking like, okay, what happens if this comes up, and trying to understand like what the data really means and trying to tie in all the stuff that I learned during my time here at Cal Maritime.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You know, I wanted to tell you, I met a professor had flown out from the University of Maryland, and Professor Parker actually knew him as well. He knows everybody, it seems like. Anyway, we were talking, and he said, because he teaches graduate school, and he was out here for a project, and he was talking about when he gets his interns, what he looks for in an intern. He said, like, you know, grades are important, but anybody can get an A. But what I want is the person that, like, when nothing goes right and Murphy's Law happens, you know, everything goes wrong. Do I have that person that can just figure it out and just make it happen with what they have? And that was his big, and this is a guy that's been in the industry for, he's 70 something. So he's been doing this for 40 years easily. And that was like, you know, like, I remember him just saying that, like, anybody can get good grades, but not everybody can just figure out how to back a boat down a trailer, or, you know, or down a ramp, or get it to work when it's not working, or, you know, like, that's what he was saying. That was, and I thought maybe that was some valuable information too. It's not always just about your grades. It's about your willingness to do whatever it takes to make it happen, you know?
And sort of adding on to what Seamus said is like that some of like the phase 2 of our internship, we did some other work with moored sensors, meaning like we be going out on a boat and helping either Kristen, our field lead, or one of the other biogeochemists at SFEI, and helping them with their sort of learning, like their hands-on aspect, but also with learning how to learning and understanding that communication when you're doing like a field project, that you're out on a boat and there's a horse, like a really loud engine going on, and all you hear is just the motor going, and you really need to understand, like, okay, if you're writing calculations down and you're dealing with $20,000 plus equipment, that you really need to make sure that everything's ready to go, and not like say, okay, I'm going to figure this out by myself. But which was one thing that Seamus and I sort of noticed at the beginning. Like, we sort of had our own ideas, and we were just like, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it, until maybe, like, would you say the second week was when we realized that, okay, we really need to work as a team, and then really stick to it, and then try to create a concrete idea plan.
I think what he's getting into, Ryan, is that they did something I wasn't really expecting. I was kind of expecting to go in there and really have my hand held and kind of be babysat and just like, okay, this is what we want you to do. And, you know, the big joke was, you know, we did get a lot of great experience. You know, we never had to get anybody coffee or anything. You know, that's kind of the joke for interns, right?
Yeah.
And, but what they did, and I remember I made a comment, and I remember telling Mark, like, don't they realize we're still in college? Because they literally said, here's the problems we've been facing. And a lot of these papers they've been having like dissolved oxygen issues. So like fish kills and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with like water treatment facilities and nutrient loads that come out of them. And so they didn't want to like bias us too much. So they didn't give us too much information, but they kind of told us like, these are the problems we're facing. And almost maybe they wanted a whole nother perspective. And then they really just said, because I said, well, what do you want us to do for a project? And they said, I don't know, just figure it out. And that's when I said, don't they realize we're in college? But then it made us really like figure it out. So I would ask him questions, he would ask me questions. We went down to the site. We were like, okay, we had no idea what we were going to do. And then we ended up coming up with like 4 ideas, and 3 of them made the cut. And the 4th one actually probably would have made the cut. We just didn't have time. But it really got us to be creative and really think about, because, you know, sometimes in college you're just kind of force fed everything, you know, and now you just don't get to regurgitate.
You're trying to just get through everything that you have.
Yeah, you actually now have to do some critical thinking and really assess the situation, and then use the tools you have been taught to figure out what would be the best approach. And there was a lot of it required a lot of deep thinking. I mean, don't you think, Mark? We really had to. I mean, I was great training for me. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the critical thinking and actually like thinking about like the experiment that you want to conduct and actually like going down to the site, which was sort of one of our good like sort of key essential points of actually doing our experiments, because we wanted to see, okay, well, how big are these salt ponds? And so the first site visit that Seamus and I went down there, we're like, okay, we're just gonna walk this
Yeah.
pond A9 and see how long it takes us. It took us about an hour and a half to just get halfway. So we were just like, okay, bring bikes
It
next
was
time.
about 4 hours all the way around that sucker, and then the next time we brought bicycles, so we got some.
Yeah.
I believe I've been hiking by the San Mateo Bridge on the breakers and stuff out there. And the first time I went, I'm like, man, I'm still walking out here. Like this is far. So yeah, I
It's
definitely
all part of that. It's all part of that thing.
Mhm.
That those levees that you were on, it's all part of the same salt ponds. And
Gotcha.
yeah, on a map, on Google Maps, you look at it, you're like, oh, that's no big deal. And then you're like, oh my gosh, these things huge,
I know.
Yeah, I can't believe we did the whole thing in 7.5 hours, to be honest.
Yeah.
The
So
kayaking.
then you guys basically ended up making your kind of research experiment proposal and presented it to SFEI, and then they signed off on it and you went out and conducted it. So how'd you guys develop what you wanted to research?
And then once we submitted it to them, they tweaked it to make sure that it was, it was our idea, but they tweaked it so that we have maximum efficiency, right?
Gotcha.
So there were things they knew that we didn't know. Of course, I mean, they all have PhDs, and right?
Yeah, so, you're just an undergrad. No.
Yeah, they definitely had a handle on it, but it was nice because it showed me like they had respect for us, that they actually valued our opinions, and they really were. I have no complaints. They were so accommodating and everything. I really felt like part of the team. Mark felt like part of the team. We actually felt like we worked there. We didn't feel like we were interns at all.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so how we came up with it, just kind of think tank stuff, like we bounce ideas off each other, and we'd go down there and let's do this, okay, well, let's deploy this here, and let's do this, and let's use 2 exos instead of 1 exo. That's the SON, the moored buoy for like the parameters. And so we were like, let's put one in the pond, and then how are we going to deploy that? Oh, my buddy's got kayaks. That the guy that I rent a room off, he's got a couple of ocean going kayaks. So we dropped one in the pond on that, and then we used a buoy apparatus, and we threw that one in the slough. And we did it up at Guadalupe Slough, and we did it down at Elvisa Slough. And then it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then it just kind of like, once we got the best part, the most important part was just doing it, just putting pencil to paper, as Professor Cifuentes says, and just starting to just, cross things off that maybe aren't going to work. And then when we did our presentation, part of our presentation at the end, we did a 1 hour long presentation. It probably could have been 2 hours, but part of it was, what worked, what didn't work, and what feedback. We gave them some critical feedback because it was a first year deal. So whoever gets to do it next year is definitely going to benefit. They're probably not going to read as much, because that was one of the things we said was, hey, we didn't need to read 300 pages.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's like when I'm talking with students to write their resumes or CVs and stuff like that. It's like you start big and then you can start knocking things down, but cast a wide net for sure. Cool. So then it's because I know you guys were a lot on your own, but what type of guidance or mentorship and stuff throughout the whole process were they giving you, in conjunction with kind of independently letting you, do your thing?
Well, sort of for our experiments and everything, the day before, or the morning of that experiment that we would be conducting, whether it's moored sensor work with Kristen, or it's just us going down to the site visit, Kristen will write up a list of questions varying from like, okay, what do you observe, what observations you have. And when we go down to the site, we would fill it out, write down possible experiment capture zones, or seeing like, okay, what's the interaction with the tide going into the pond and going out, sort of gathering that info. If you want to
Yeah,
add
her
on.
guidance was great because what happened was we would come in more with layman's terms or ideas, like
Yeah.
conceptions, and like then she would like clean it up so that it was more scientific. So we'd say,
Mhm.
oh yeah, this interaction with the tide did this really crazy thing where like the slough would hit high tide and then like it would start going into low tide. So it's now going back out to the South Bay. Like part of it's going out and then the other
Mhm.
part's still going into the pond for like another hour and a half till it equalizes in height level.
Mhm.
So you had an actual situation where water was like going two different directions. It was crazy. And
That
so,
is crazy.
but we didn't understand like how to conceptualize that or even explain it. So like that's where they came in handy
Mhm.
because then now they're the experts and they were like, okay, do this or say this, or or they'd ask us questions so that we would do a little more research on the subject to just
Gotcha.
kind of get us to, because we knew a lot. The schools prepared us, but there's just so much to know.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that and like I said, it covered 4 different disciplines. There was physical, chemical, biological, even geological. So it just their guidance was really awesome. And yeah, right, Mark, you had Kristen and you had Ari and you had
Yeah,
Derek.
and then we also had Derek.
Yeah, and David at some point, especially in our presentation, David cleared up a lot of things. He was our PI,
Okay.
David Sen. um, and just to give you an idea, he's got a PhD from MIT. I mean, no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it just, lightweight.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, especially for a new internship or someone. I know sometimes there companies or organizations and stuff is like don't know exactly how to go, but it's not cool to see how they blended letting you guys integrate yourself with the team and go for it while augmenting that with like, okay, yeah, you can't put the tide was crazy. It's doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I
So
was definitely doing some crazy stuff. But yeah, you can't say that, right?
yeah, no, exactly. You could say that to me as a non-oceanographer, and I'll get it. But so what was what were some of your favorite things about the internship, and then what were some of your least favorite things about the
Oh,
internship?
we had lots of very fun adventures, including actually. So when one of my fun perspectives was when we were it was about 6:30 in the morning, and we had to uh, pull the 50 to 60 pound buoy out with the song connected to it and put it in the it was in the slough, and we had these wet shoes on and for like canoes and stuff, and the mud in the slough, it is so slippery
Yeah.
that you can get up to your waist in just the mud.
Okay.
And so when you're getting out, it's pretty much like wet cement, but it's just you feel gross after.
Yeah.
I definitely would say that if it's a very hands-on job, so expect to get a lot of get wet, get muddy, because that's science for you. And one of the least favorites, I would say, of my experience with the thing was that we didn't really have that much time to be out in the field. Most of it was like the background readings and doing the planning. But since this is the first year, that it sort of gives us that like idea that okay, maybe next year they might change it a little bit. But
Yeah, I think he hit it right there. Is that the 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 reading, although some of it was necessary because it had to give us a background on what we were getting into. As far as like the general, like what happens when A happens to B, what happens when A and B happen, like we kind of had an idea, like if there's excessive biological activity, what are going to be the ramifications, right? So like we knew that basic stuff. So some of that, and if we had shaved off maybe 2 weeks, that would have given us more time in the field. I think I definitely felt the field work would have been more valuable,
Mhm.
um, for sure. But that again, it's a learning curve for both of us, and we made sure we give them honest feedback. And I think that's they really appreciated the honest feedback instead of just saying, oh yeah, everything was great and not wanting to rock the boat. They want you to rock the boat, right? Because they don't know, and so it's critical feedback, but in a in a political way. I mean, you can't trash them too bad, so you gotta say it in a way that still everybody feels good. But I think I mean, we really didn't have anything to trash on them. I think that they did a great job, and being a little bit older, I know how people communicate, and she never once got short with us or was impatient or any, I mean, like, it was really awesome. Like, she was perfect. Our immediate Kristen was like perfect she had the perfect temperament, the perfect everything for like dealing with internships, because I'm sure we were asking pretty lame questions or whatever.
The basic ones. Yeah.
Mark, she never lost her cool or anything.
Yeah, definitely not.
Nice.
Yeah, she reminded me of like a school teacher in a way.
Really?
Just so yeah, I think we just had hopefully it wasn't just an isolated thing with just this company. Hopefully everybody that does an internship has a really good experience as well.
Gotcha. So, and Seamus, you were kind of just mentioning, so this one will be a little bit diverging for you guys, being at different ages and so on and so forth. How do you guys see this internship kind of fitting into your broader career goals after you graduate from Cal Maritime?
You want to start that, Seamus?
No, go for it. I've been talking a lot. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I totally find it as sort of like there's a lot of skills I've learned, mainly like learning about like, okay, that I'm working with someone else, so I must acknowledge that I don't need to put the load all on myself. Another thing is that it really shows what it means to be like with a fellow cadet working on something that you don't like have answers to. You don't have you have lots of questions but very few answers. But with what I've learned here during my internship, I definitely will use a lot of the skills that I've learned to hopefully apply those when I will be hopefully in the future a U.S. Navy officer for oceanography. So there's lots of stuff for me to learn, but
you do see a nice little tie-in to what the goal is. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, and it was nice to finally put what we've learned into action. Like sometimes you're learning it in the book, especially with COVID online, it doesn't always make sense. And then once you get out in the real world, you're like, wow, this really makes sense. Like, you're actually seeing it happen, like we saw algae mats in the ponds, right? And then we actually understood why those were there, in the process behind it. But we had learned some things in marine ecology and then marine ecology lab. The labs were the worst part about being on COVID. Was the lab, you just watch someone do it, or it was just, I mean, they did the best. I'm not knocking it, but they did a great job for it being COVID, but
it wasn't the same.
It's not the same. You're not there and you're not in a lab coat.
Yeah, I mean, lab is meant to be doing, so just watching the lab for sure.
And so we actually got to do the lab. Like, this was like we actually spent about a month in the, all together in the field with going out and doing dry runs. And this was actually like my opportunity to do my chem lab, my physics lab, my marine ecology lab, that I didn't get. So it was really nice to actually get out there and actually do something,
Totally. And sort of adding to what Seamus is stated, was that one of the things that I did not know, probably Seamus is on the same boat as this, was completely taking apart the XO2 sonde and learning how to put each of the individual sensors back on and recalibrating it, which is very time consuming. So one thing I definitely would say is with science, definitely be patient, definitely take it slow, don't rush through it.
Yeah, there's a lot of prep work and there's a lot of cleanup.
Gotcha.
So luckily we did the 2 or 3 experiments done in a week. And so we kind of prepped for everything and then did them and then the cleanup. But each one would have been its own mess, right? Like their truck, they were like, this is the messiest, dirtiest we've ever seen it. But then we went and we spent a whole day cleaning it to where it looked brand new. And that was the other thing is, you always want to leave the place better than you found it. That's kind of like, you have to have that attitude, you're representing the school. I think that's the next question. Like, what about overall advice, right?
Mhm.
But before that, I went in, not that I really like expected this to happen, but this was my attitude, so that I would take it really serious, as I was expecting a job offer at the end. And then
Mhm.
that way if that was my attitude, whether it happened or not, and that's not my motivation, it was to put my mind in a right mindset that I
Mhm.
was going to take it seriously, represent the school well, because if I worked as hard as I wanted to get a job, then that means I would have worked really hard to represent, you know what I mean? Everything
Yes,
would have
yep,
worked out good.
exactly.
So at
And
the end, when we were just dying and we were tired and we just, you're tired, you're cold, you're miserable, you don't really want to do it, but then you're like, I got to do it. Come
Mhm.
on, Mark, we got to do this,
Yep.
There's
Uh,
there's definite
yeah.
days that Seamus and I we finish our 16-hour research day, and we're just like, okay, it's 7 p.m., but now we have to drive all the way back to Richmond, go drive back to SFBI and unload all the equipment, and we're just like, we're just done. But
Yeah.
I definitely feel that sticking not just as a team, but sticking to that long-term goal of actually like just push forward, we're almost there, really kicks in. And also with checking in with each other was one thing that I sort of noticed that during our internship, there'd be some mornings where Seamus would be like, okay, I'm coming to your house at 3:30, like 3:30 in the morning to come pick you up. And I'll call him and just like say, hey, just are you still gonna plan on coming, just so that I know, like logistically, like, okay, is he running late? He'll let me know, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And Seamus, before we move to the last question, career goals and after graduating, because you said you're a senior this year. So what are you kind of planning to do with your oceanography degree?
Oh man, I'm still trying to figure that out, because
I gotcha.
the thing about the oceanography degree is there's 4 pathways to go, right? You can be a chemical oceanographer, you can be a marine biologist, you can be a physical oceanographer that just deals with wave patterns and weather. That's a lot of weather. And you can also be like a geological oceanographer, like an archaeologist, like a marine archaeologist. So there's like 4 different pathways to go. And then, I'm not taking graduate school off I'm a little older, so I don't know if I
Mhm.
want to do that. I'm kind of in a hurry to get out there.
Get working. Yep.
But I haven't I kind of like everything, so I haven't really figured out which discipline I want to go into, because every time I think I want to be one, I find out that no, I actually like this other stuff. So I actually like everything. If I could just kind of be like a jack of all trades, master of none, like just kind of go out there and just kind of like what we did with our internship, where
Mhm.
we didn't really do, I guess we were heavy in the marine biology part, but there were still other things that were in there. And that's the thing about the oceanography discipline, is that you really have to know all this stuff, because it all interacts. So even if you're a marine biologist, you still have to know how the chemistry works, and you still have to know how the physical environment works as well. And then same with all those other ones. They all play on each other. The ocean's really dynamic, and it's not like going in and saying, okay, I'm going to be a volcanist and I'm going to study volcanoes, right? Or whatever. Because the ocean is so fluid and dynamic, you really have to have a really good broad understanding of how it all works. I said this the other day, the importance of the ocean is like this, like the earth is like a car, right? And you can drive with a busted windshield. You can drive with like the stereo not working. You can even drive with flat tires, but you can't drive with a busted engine. And the earth is the engine,
Mhm.
So, we have to think about that, right?
Gotcha. Well, I'm gonna tell you, come in and talk to us in career services, and maybe we can help you find out where that fits in, because we talk with a lot of cadets that kind of have the same, I like all these different things, and how can I find a way to kind of meld it into some sort of career path. So with that, then we'll let you guys close out with just advice for cadets looking for internships this upcoming year. So it can be, you can talk about process, you can talk about just things that you learn to expect, you know, I know you guys are talking about kind of the unexpected stuff, and, you know, you got to just figure things out as they come. So what would be advice for oceanography cadets?
I would say definitely be open-minded, be open, be ready to face extremely hard challenges. If you're working with a team and you come up with multiple problems, always reach out, ask for help, even if you don't know like a specific thing that like if you have to take apart an XO2 sensor, like if you don't know how to ask. Another thing is sort of what Seamus was saying was leave a good impression at the end and sort of have that mindset that this is like a real job and you're actually working and you're trying to how do I say it?
Well, you know, this is a small community, and so
Yeah.
by going there and doing a good job, we have now, because someone will, like, let's say he and I go and get a job somewhere, and then they cross paths and they're like, oh yeah, he worked with us and he did a great job, or you know, right? You know, there I can't emphasize enough that there are going to be times where you're just not going to want to do something, and you're going to have to. It's going to be 10 o'clock at night, and you're going to be like, let's just go home, and then you just have to go in and wash something off, because if you don't wash it off, it's got salt water on it and it's going to destroy it, and then how are you going to look, right? So like, you have to just make sure you have that discipline, because it can backfire on you as well. You know, if you go in there and, you know, do a bad job, you could misrepresent the school, piss a lot of people off, and then, you know, now you've just tried. You could almost do more damage than good if you don't have the right attitude going in. But I would say that number one overall advice is take school seriously. It doesn't always translate to good grades, but it generally does if you just take it seriously and you're involved, because that's how we got picked, right? I mean, Dr. Parker didn't pick us because we were C students and we never asked questions and we just never seemed engaged. He definitely picked students that were, you know, and also that live locally or could be locally. That's definitely helpful. If you live in Los Angeles, you're not, you know, I mean, and it's a logistical nightmare.
Tough commute.
Yeah. I mean, or you can't arrange. So it's not completely that, but I would definitely say there was a pattern, you know, good grades, enthusiasm, representing the school correctly, because this is their baby, and they're not going to go and send people out that are going to misrepresent the school, because they've worked really, really hard getting this program together. And I appreciate everything they've done. I appreciate the fact that I live in Benicia and I can go to this school, you know, and I have kids, so it works out really great for me.
Mhm.
And so I try, this was like my way of paying them back, you know, for all the good they've done for me. That's how you feel, Mark?
Yeah, I would sort of say on sort of Seamus's side that I like with the internship and everything that I sort of feel that with like I sort of gained new leadership, learned like a lot of challenges and learning like, okay, this is the problem we have, and learning how to actually assess that problem, but not by myself, but with a fellow peer colleague. So
Nice.
And ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask
uh,
questions. You know?
that's one thing. Is in Professor Cifuentes' class, he likes questions, and for me, like I really like to ask questions, but at the same time, I sort of have this grudge of like, what happens if I ask this question? Is it gonna be good? Is it gonna be bad? That kind of instinct. But I'm just like, based off the internship that I've done, I just feel that like that sort of lessened it. So I'm more much easier to more confident to ask those questions rather than sort of like holding them back and just like I'm not sure about it.
And I'll even say from talking to employers and you know, reading employer surveys about internships and stuff, that's one of their biggest things that they see from student interns is not asking questions. So kind of, Mark, like you were talking about, maybe like overthinking and like, oh, it's a dumb question, but they know that you guys don't know everything. And so, you know, and it's not expected that you know everything. So those questions that to us, you know, might, oh, I think that's going to be a dumb question, for them, they're like, yeah, make sure you get that asked and answered. So we're not making even these little mistakes through the process, for sure.
Yeah, because when you don't ask the question and then you really make a fool of yourself.
Mhm.
You only have to do that a couple times before you realize, you learn that lesson. It's better to ask a question and feel like a fool than to not ask it and be a fool, right? So
Definitely. Definitely.
I think too, I am older, so I don't have a problem with like, oh my God, how is so and so going to think of me because I just asked this question? Like, I really don't care because it doesn't bother me.
Mhm.
But I know, being 20 years old, you're still in that kind of like, oh no, I don't want to ask the question because what if I'm the only one that doesn't know? But I have realized this, that if you don't know the answer, guaranteed half the class doesn't know the answer, and probably most likely 80 or 90% don't know it. And then they'll actually come up to you later and go, man, I'm so glad you asked that question because I had no idea what they were talking about. But again, still, it's hard for people to pull that trigger to do it because they feel like they're going to be judged, right?
Mhm.
So you have to get over that because you can't know everything, and your perception level may be different than other people's too. Some people might hear the professor and go, oh yeah, this makes total sense, and you might hear something completely different. So it's just all about that, and just getting clarity sometimes. But I think definitely more than even grades, being enthusiastic and participating and just showing that you care, because if you care, then you're probably going to do a good job representing the school. Because at this point, with the infancy of the program, I think that's probably one of their biggest, when they're picking people to send out on interns, I would probably guess that's their biggest concern right now, is making sure they are represented
Yep.
well, so that
Yep.
they can keep getting more opportunities later on. And that was the other thing too, is that he and I went in with this kind of attitude, like we owe it to the next class to do a good job so that our cadets coming behind us
Keep the
can
pipeline
benefit.
going.
Yeah, and if we don't do that, then we've totally done them an injustice. And it's a very selfless way to act. Because again, at 10 o'clock at night, you're just, you're cold and you're miserable. And I can't emphasize it enough. You're covered in salt. I mean, you're not happy, and you got mud all over. And
Yeah. The truck reeks, like all that.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely was not
Yeah,
pretty.
especially with the field work that Seamus and I have done.
Yeah.
I kind of felt bad, Seamus, when you had to drive the truck back that one after that last 16-hour shift.
Yeah.
The truck, it just reeked, and I'm just like, I should have driven it, but
Yeah, actually, my girlfriend bought me one of those things you put on the vent, like pina colada.
Mhm.
That didn't even help. But I
It
had all
didn't
the
matter.
windows down. No.
Got it. Well, thank you two for hopping on this call. I think it's going to be a good another thing for the oceanographers to add as a resource, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much. Yeah, great talk.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate your time.